According to BMW, the i3 is the world's first premium electric vehicle. Ignoring the fact that the excellent Tesla Model S has been with us for some time now, what BMW is trying to say, I think, is that the i3 is desirable, just like every other BMW. It's an electric car for which conventional excuses aren't required, in other words. And as such it can and should be judged much like any other BMW.
So on the move, the first thing that strikes you about the i3 is the same thing that strikes you about all EVs, and it's this. I've selected drive and put my foot down. Doesn't matter how many times you do it, it's always really spooky. You just start moving and there's no noise at all. I'm in 100% E mode at the moment. I'll show you what you can do with the range extender in a minute. First things that strike you once you've got over the EV bit is that the ride it feels absolutely typically like a BMW, in that there's this underlying sense of kind of firm, reassuring, call it sportiness if you would, but you just detect every little grain of change in texture of the tarmac beneath your backside. And I like that because I like to know exactly what's going on down there on the road between the tyres and the road surface, and the i3 has that. Lots of other EVs, in fact I don't think any other EVs other than the Tesla Model S give you that same I am driving a proper car sensation, and it's really nice, it's great.
The i3 is powered by an electric motor that generates 168 bhp and 184 pounds-feet of torque. That makes it more potent than the McLaren P1 in EV power alone, interestingly. It's also extremely light for an EV at just 1195 kilograms. And that's thanks to the extensive use of a new material called carbon fibre reinforced plastic throughout its construction. This also makes it stiff, maybe a touch too stiff in certain circumstances.
The steering is just a little bit heavier than you might expect, considering how pathetically narrow the front tyres are. I mean, look at this. Look how much like a bicycle tyre that looks. But there's proper feel through the steering, even if the steering wheel itself, it feels nice enough in the hands, but it just looks a bit weird. It looks a bit spindly. The performance, well, it's way the right side of sprightly. BMW reckon it'll get to 60 in 7.2 seconds. We've figured it at just a whisker over 8 seconds. But either way, you're talking about a car that's properly brisk. I mean, we're talking about sort of warm hatchback performance. Inevitably, the brakes do feel a little bit weird to begin with because there's regenerative braking going on, which means when you lift off the throttle, you get this kind of dragging effect. It feels like you're sort of driven into a sea of treacle and the car wants to stop all on its own without me pressing the brake pedal. That's because it's regenerating power back to the batteries via the brakes as you brake. And then if you actually properly brake by pressing the pedal, that's when it gets a bit weird because it feels a bit unnatural. But ultimately, the i3 stops really, really well. I'm not sure I quite go for the scissor doors. It's a bit weird. I don't understand why you couldn't just have a conventional set of rear doors that open independently from the front doors. You cannot open the rear doors without the front doors being open. I kind of see that as a bit of a gimmick, really, rather than anything genuinely useful. I don't get it. And the boots are a bit small. The boot in the front is pathetic, and the boot in the back is quite badly compromised by the fact that you've got a little motorbike engine in the back there. But, you know, there's just about enough boot space, and there's loads of room inside. Okay, 6'2" and above are going to be a little bit uncomfortable in the back seats, but up here there's just a beautiful feeling of spaciousness. Really nice clear ergonomics, nice fresh dash design, which doesn't really have a conventional instrument cluster, and a really nice big screen over there for all the gubbins. The gubbins. Let's talk about the gubbins. Let me slow down, stop, and just show you through the gubbins.
So by playing with the iDrive button down where the gear lever might normally be, you can swap between pure EV and range extender modes, check out your own driving techniques, preload the heating system, and even get tips on how to drive your i3 as economically as possible.
It seems vaguely ridiculous, but you can actually turn the traction control off in the i3. It doesn't mean you can turn everything off, unfortunately, but you get this kind of dynamic mode traction control system, and you can properly chuck it about. And it does respond really well when you chuck it about. It understeers. Ultimately, it understeers because there's a lot of weight at the back of the car, and there is no way BMW would possibly have allowed it to oversteer, no matter how many safety systems it's got on it. But actually, if you do throw it around, it does. It goes pretty much where you want it to, so long as you don't fly into a corner too fast, in which case you just got understeer, understeer, understeer. The i3 basically handles, and handles well. It feels good to drive this thing, it really does. So the reality of the range is, well, BMW claims about 80 miles worth of electric power, which takes you about 3-4 hours to charge from a normal plug, and about the same again from the petrol engine. But I have to say, I've been hooning it around a bit today, and I've done, I don't know, 30 odd miles, and I've only got 21 miles left apparently. So I'd say the real world range is probably 70 to 80 on e-power, and probably 70 to 80 on the petrol as well. But even so, that's a 160 mile range. How often do you do 160 miles in one journey? Not often. Okay, one thing that's not so clever is because there is so little noise, in fact no noise at all from any kind of engine, all I can hear is this kind of road rumble. And because there's nothing else to interrupt that noise, it actually is starting to become a little bit tiresome. So, conclusion about the BMW i3. As an EV, it takes the game into a completely different league compared with such as a Nissan Leaf. It's not quite as compelling, it's not quite as intriguing and interesting as the Tesla Model S. But in many ways, it is a kind of junior version of that car. It's got some proper performance. It drives really nicely, the steering is good, the handling is good, the ride feels like that of a BMW. And it's not too expensive. The purely electric version costs £25,000 with the government grant, and this one with the range extender, which is definitely the one you'd have, costs £28,000. I know that's a lot of money, but this is a lot of car. The i3 is very good. It borders on genius.